demonic possession and alien abduction. Similarities in the enigma. I have been investigating issues connected with the UFO phenomenon. It has been apparent in a large number of people I interviewed that the effect of these interactions, whether with non-human intelligence or with other consciousness, seems to demonstrate many similarities between the experience of extraterrestrial abduction and demonic spiritual possession. I have been able to identify the following similarities between the abductions of extraterrestrials and the possession of impure spirits, which seems to confirm that both phenomena are executed by the same intelligence. Impossible. The way to operate. The terror factor. Most people would feel the same panic about being abducted from their bedrooms by extraterrestrials to make them traumatic experiments, as being possessed by demons or disincarnated entities. In both cases, the terror is based on the inability to stop intrusive activities. It is observable, at least in all the people I interviewed, and having read much literature on FES, that many people would prefer to admit that they had abductions rather than demonic possessions, since the first provides at least the mitigating contact with what they believe is a form of superior intelligence, coming to an end, perhaps, as Harvard psychiatrist John Mack in a long list of people says, that is to have contact with messengers of God, while the latter denotes an impure contact, morally corrupt, and perhaps even cooperation with the most negative force in the universe. This is why many people fall more easily if these intelligences are presented as stellar brothers or aliens, because there is doubt about their nature, and many think that in reality they can be positive angels or benevolent beings seeking to help humanity, when this is just another of his faces. We can judge the nature of these entities by their effects on the people they contact. And from the results, we can see that their interference has nothing positive and highly attentive against free will. All who report having been abducted never become the same, as if their alien captors were always near, or in some cases, within them. This is very much like an infection or a state of possession. Dr. William J. Baldwin, researcher on the phenomenon of entity possessions, supported by his wife Reverend Judith Baldwin, often refers to obscure entities in this way. They are like bacteria, neither more nor less. They are another way of life, but have a different purpose. They have conscience and their own will. Many researchers are claiming that their abducted patients are finding the experiences more and more acceptable, and even spiritually transformative. Mr. John Carpenter, Director of Abduction Research for the Mutual UFO Network, MFN, has noticed an attitude of greater acceptance in the contact of abductees. Dr. John Mack says many abductees develop affection for their alien captors. Author Woodley Stryber admits to love and miss these creatures, although they have been subjected without anesthetic to medical experiments, including nasal and anal probes. In the case of demonic spiritual possessions, a large amount of the success of the entity to enter the guest depends on the cooperation of the guest. If the host finds power, benefit, or even love as a result of the invading entity, then the host will find more and more acceptable the presence of the invader, and in many cases transformative, to the point of developing a dependency or love towards the entities. The Stockholm Syndrome, recognized in victims and captives of terrorists, is something we find again and again in all of these contacted. Extraterrestrials and spiritual entities are presented in identical ways. There are many cases where victims are unable to separate the true identities of these entities, whether they are extraterrestrials or demons, suggesting that these entities are the same thing. Many people confuse extraterrestrials with angels, another example of the human inability to correctly discern and be carried away by a spiritual experience. Additionally, whether they are extraterrestrial or entities, both may be able to telepathic communication, inducing altered and hypnotic states, provoking regressions and suggestions, hide, both in the sense of successfully convincing the guest that they do not exist, and of convincing a large portion of the public of its non-existence. Both are also capable of hiding in the physical sense, within a fragmented psyche, and at other times within the physical, quantum, or spiritual body of the host. Aggressive reactions when they are discovered, as well as a high level of emotional stress caused by their discovery. The person will enter into anger, denial, and impulsive actions as well as in a state of emotional unrest. Travel time. Get physical and mental control over your guests for extended periods of time, manipulating and forcing their guests to perform acts against their will, including violent sexual acts, crimes, even suicide. The worship of the solar temple can be an extreme example of this concept. Its leader LOGRAR claimed to have contact with extraterrestrials and said that the only way to go to his planet was through the glory of fire, which resulted in the death by fire of all members of the cult in 1994. Physically move their guests from one place to another through various means, compromising the guests' free will through mind control and manipulation. Interaction with guests at soul level. The establishment of highly organized hierarchical levels capable of interacting and controlling a large number of humans at the same time and simultaneously. According to Dr. Gregory Little, psychologist and UFO researcher, these entities manifest themselves or enter human perceptual levels from low frequencies of the electromagnetic spectrum. They interrupt the transitory journey of the soul after death. Examples of this can be found in the same Bible and in several works by author and cardiologist Maurice Rawlings, to Helene Back, video in English annex. They claim to represent the light, that is, to a higher spiritual power, which is interesting considering that the literal translation of Lucifer is bearer of the light. These entities do not appear to have an earlier human origin. Any type of entity may also have been possessed or abducted. Without going into more detail, it is good to remember that it is said that the demons, or fallen angels, were removed from grace, even though they were originally created by God. In fact, they may have been influenced, even possessed and abducted, by Lucifer at the time of the Great Rebellion in heaven. These stellar beings may have been vulnerable to possessions and abductions as much as humans have been. Both groups may have decided to interact with humans following a specific agenda of their controller, Lucifer. Dr. Baldwin mentions the similarity of some demons to insects. Many ufologists report interactions with beings that look like insects. At the global level, many governmental, military, and industrial leaders, along with the general population, can act identically to these entities because of the relatively high level of ownership and influence these entities have over people occupying leadership areas. The same for public people, the middle of entertainment, etc. Apparently they are able to create beings like robots organic to carry out works in the physical world. They can create voices in the minds of guests. Many well-known researchers see a direct connection between the UFO phenomenon and black magic. These beings convince people that they are chosen, special, and promise gifts or concessions for their cooperation and implementation of their agendas. Attempts to hybridize bodies with their own genetic material and manipulate the soul of human owners. Inducing sleep state, where code and hidden information is implanted in the mind of the host for later access when they want the person to perform some action. Attempts to dissuade the guest from using his free will, or to exercise it in a way that does not benefit the entities. Both entities do not care at all the free will of their guests. The things that entities can do, can be done to a lesser extent by their victims and guests. They show great familiarity with technology. They seem to be able to influence humans to develop and use technologies. These technologies have origins in parasite situations where a person had interdimensional contacts to create certain technologies that were convenient to the agendas of these entities. It is important to mention that before all these familiarities, there is nothing more to surrender to the evidence and to know that on our planet lives in another dimension a great group of beings with agendas contrary to the human well-being, immersed in its own spiritual warfare and that continued it through the human's latest once. And that humanity sleeps without knowing the drama of cosmic proportions that surrounds it, and the need to understand that it must align itself with its creator, unless it wants to be automatically aligned with fallen beings. Thank you very much for your attention. See you in the next video. Bye.